Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool review for you from the microbrand Richard Legrand. Now, I'm sure there might be a fancier way to pronounce that, like Richard Legrand, or somebody will chime in and they will tell me to fancify that name. But for all intents and purposes, this is a brand RL, or Richard Legrand. To those of us uncultured swine that run the channel. So basically, they are a microbrand focusing on combining classic aesthetics with modern components and finishing. Of course, this type of watch, some key common characteristics and design language. This is a dive watch. So what you're going to be looking for is, of course, water resistance through some type of screw-down crown. You're going to want something that's tough, legible, with a dive bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelets. Now, this particular model is the Odyssey Mark III Oceanfarer, and it's basically the anticipated sequel to the previous Odyssey Mark I and II. So this is their third try at this formula, and basically for the first time ever, they now house a higher beat, slim movement, which allows for a slimmer profile and higher performance. The updated case shape that is now 40 millimeters in diameter, and the bracelet have sharper edges, which create a more modern and masculine silhouette. And that's basically how they describe it. So with all that said, maybe I'll get it in hand now and let you know how I describe it. Okay, so this watch essentially is what many watchmakers and younger companies, they try to do. They try to make what could be a one watch, something very versatile, very classic. It definitely has hints of other design aesthetics, let's say like the Blancpain 50 Fathoms, but it has its own elements as well, and you know, it's close enough to be desirable but far enough to other designs to where it feels still quite original. And what they've done here is they have combined a lot of really interesting elements. Look at that bracelet, fully articulated, has that great flat brush finish, which is very popular these days. I guess I'll just jump into this right now. I really like pretty much everything about this watch except for one thing, which is the end link. I don't like it. I don't love it. I think it just seems a little bit soft in comparison to how sharp everything else is. And I would prefer a female end link instead of the male end link, which essentially is going to elongate that lug to lug distance there, as you can see. But I don't hate it. It's just something that I feel like so much of this watch is great, and then there's this, which is just like good enough. You know, I'd rather have this versus maybe like a female end link that was hollow. I'd rather have a solid end link with a male end there and being slightly not as nice as the rest. And of course, I'd rather have this being not as nice versus, let's say, bring down the quality of everything else to match that end link. So more of a nitpick, if anything, but I will throw that out there because this is going to majority. I'm really digging this thing, and I'm super jazzed about the price. It's only $369. So basically well under 400 bucks. You're getting a Miyota 9039, which is their no date movement. So you're getting a no date movement, so no ghost position, under 400 bucks. It's got the nice smooth sweep to it. I mean, you really can't beat that. So it has a 40 millimeter diameter, 13 millimeter height, which might sound a little thick because it is a little bit thicker, but that's because of the domed crystal. You don't count the domed crystal, this thing's only 11.5 millimeters without it. It's 46 millimeters lug to lug. Of course, it's going to be a little bit longer in actuality because of that male end link, but luckily these links are, aren't super thick, and they're actually super short. They're basically half links. This is the link size, which I think really helps with, look at that, helps with how comfortable this thing is in the way that you can adjust it. And of course, you do have really nice adjustability within that milled clasp. So when we look here, we do have a really nice sapphire insert here, fully lumed. 120 clicks. Really no play, so nicely done. Although that is something that's easier to do with 120 click bezel, so it's definitely a nice mixture of notchy and smooth, especially for the price point. My God, under 400 bucks. This is really excellent when you think of it that way. Now, as far as the crown, it is screw down, and it is signed there, as you can see. And then you do have these great high polished bevels with a relatively, slab side there. There's not a lot of contours besides the beveling, but it definitely does add to kind of the square nature, sharp, more modern styling that you're going to see here. That starts really at the font on these numerals, on the indices at the 12, the 3, the 6, and the 9. Another thing that I might, if I was working on their team, I might probably change the font to match. I feel like the number font matching is something that could probably be an easy touch, easy fix that would actually make this a little bit more of a cohesive design. But there's plenty of watches that have way more font differences than what you're going to see here on this model. Now, of course, we got the full sapphire everything. You got the sapphire insert, you got the sapphire crystal, you got the anti-reflective coating. The back here, you have a really nicely stamped case back, as you can see. So that's one thing, basically. And when it comes to the world of dive watches, it's like if you don't have a display case back, you better have a nicely stamped case back, and this sure does. One thing you're also noticing as you're looking at the back of the watch is it has quick release pins built in there to the bracelet, which I think is really smart. I haven't seen this on another affordable watch besides the Christopher Ward Trinet line. So, and I think they're actually expanding it. So that's actually a really, really cool and nice feature to have, and will save your case probably some scratches and whatnot when you are changing this out. But going in between, maybe one of their nice rubber straps or this really cool bracelet, which I really, really do like. And definitely is on trend. You're seeing more and more bracelets like this, really angular, shorter shorter links and whatnot. And then this actually is a pin and collar system, so pretty much might be a little hard to change at first, but once it's changed, it's you're pretty much good to go, and it's more secure, and you don't have to worry about stripping anything. Look at the way the light plays on that. Man, that's sweet. Dig it, dig it, dig it. So let's go ahead and get into some of the details on this dial here. It is gloss black, and then you do have applied indices. They're all lumed as well. You do have that nice little splash of a red on the seconds tip there, as well as on the dial with, I believe, is the Oceanfarer little text there, which is nice. This bracelet does taper down to 18 millimeters, and then this middle clasp is about 20. You've seen this middle clasp everywhere. This V clasp, double locking. You do have the flip lock here, and then you have the button lock there. Really nice. And then you have tons of adjustability within the micro adjust holes here on this fully milled clasp. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get this piece on wrist. Okay, as you guys can see, that 40 millimeter diameter is just beautiful on my 7¼ inch wrist. Get it up close. Still quite legible, quite readable, doesn't look oversized, although there is some lens distortion that is always going to make the watch seem a little bit more bulbous and round and in your face in a up close shot there. But if I put it out here and I give you a little bit more context of my arm in the shot, you can see that scale wise this thing is really nice. Look at the way the light plays off that. Such a cool feature with those flat brushed links there. Really, really nice, especially at this price point, which is crazy, guys. I'm very, very surprised at the price. They must be selling these things like hotcakes. at this price point. And of course, the black on black motif is going to be, one of the more versatile ones there, and definitely feel like something that could be a one watch. Would it be my one watch? I don't know. I have way too many watches. And honestly, I kind of go back and forth between divers and just regular sports watches these days. I don't always need a bezel, but I think that those proportions are really nice, that they have that real spacious dial, and then the thinner kind of bezel there, and then of course all these beautiful facets and edges there that really make this feel quite modern. So there's a lot of other big crown watches that are out there, big crown divers, vintage inspired. This definitely still has a vintage inspired core to it, being a big crown, having those numerals there, just a very simple and very symmetrical layout, but it does so much to also be modern and more original with a lot of the choices that they made. So I will give them credit for that. I'm actually surprised that we don't hear more about this brand and this watch. I think it might be probably because there is a little bit of a fashiony name and also logo. But other than that, I mean, I think it's definitely very, very cool and worth a very close look. So what I'll do is set up my Lume Shot and low light transition for you guys. All right, we'll go ahead and hit the lights. Ooh, check out that BGW9. Very nice blue tone lume there. You can see that the, I'd say, that bezel insert isn't quite as bright as the rest there, but it's still really well executed. I think a lot of it is just the camera, honestly, when I'm looking at the screen versus when I'm looking down at the watch itself in front of me in the darkness. I think it's a little bit more even to the naked eye, but the camera is doing a little bit of adjusting for us. Now, one thing I also like to do in these Lume shots is actually set up some low light transition so you guys can get a little bit of an idea of how some of the colors are going to render, some of the finishes, the textures and whatnot of the watch when you're looking at it in less than optimal lighting, when you're, transitioning in and out of a vehicle, in and out of a building and whatnot. And maybe even some harsher lighting situations where you're going to see more of a high contrast there. Of course, that black glossy lacquered dial is definitely going to read pretty similar in most any lighting. So not like you're looking at some type of sunburst or fume dial that's going to play with the light too much, but it's nice because it's actually always going to match that bezel insert. One thing you can look at though in this transitional lighting is look at the way the light dances over those flat brushed links. Look at that. Ooh, man, that is an eye catcher. Look at this. Look at the way the light just clears over here. I'm digging that. Look at those links on the bottom half of the bracelet. Very, very cool. Very, very nice. And it just has a cool transitional gradient look to it that you can get easily mesmerized by. Really, really digging that a lot. And as you can see, it's just a handsome piece. Look how when you're looking at it, even just at this, there's so many different tones and hints and shades of steel you're looking at instead of just one big blank kind of look. It just gives it a more interesting look. And I think the nice thing is with the depth you're going to get out of that deep, glossy, inky dial, you're also going to get some nice highlights and lowlights contrasting all over the bracelet. So I think it keeps itself from being boring because it doesn't necessarily have so much pizzazz, because it's a little bit more vanilla, it's a little bit more safe and symmetrical, but that's what people want, right? People want the no date movement with the no date dial, and but they found ways to inject a little bit of excitement, a little bit of play into this watch, which I think is really cool. On wrist, very classic proportions. It definitely fits most any situation, especially being kind of that big crown, which makes it a little bit more classic looking. Model variants wise, you have a blue on blue with a blue sunray dial. You have the black on black gloss dial, which is here. And then you also have a black with a fume green, and then a blue with a fume, well, a black bezel, of course, within a blue flume dial. Same thing with the green, it has a black bezel. And then you have the black bezel with a pastel blue. So really interesting color combinations out there. Definitely check their site. I'll put a link in the description for the current availability. I really dig this one. I think the blue one looks really killer also, but I think this one was a fun one to review just because, you know, it's that black, that classic black and steel setup. So I know a lot of people are kind of looking for that type of watch. Comparable models, guys, we talk about this all the time. There's tons of vintage inspired big crowns out there. This definitely takes more of a modern twist on it, so I wouldn't compare it to something like, you know, something that we'd see from Tudor or Oris, or even Zodiac, because I think those definitely stay more in tune with that kind of retro vintage vibe. But this thing packs a lot of punch still, just from a complete specs, you know, point of view. And then when you even compare it to a, you know, popular microbrand, something like NTH, that are doing similar things as far as the specs go, but being a little bit more, I guess, more traditional, and then, you know, a little bit more pizzazz and color pops and whatnot as far as their options. This is still an amazing deal for the price. So like, even when you're comparing this to another micro brand, it's still cheap, let alone to a mainstream brand. So this is super affordable. I love that they punched in a little bit more of a modern infused aesthetic. And you know, the bottom line is this is a very handsome and capable sports watch that offers a ton of value. And I can see why this thing is popular, and I'm actually surprised it's not more popular. Maybe it's because we didn't show the black, you know, review yet, the black on black, because that's just, you know, that's what the people want. They want that Blanc Pond 50 fathoms slash Rolex sub slash Seamaster, you know, 300 vibe. And here you're going to get something that is definitely in the same vein of classic design aesthetic, but that is clearly not a you know, an homage watch. Some of you might say it's an homage watch based off of the dial layout, but I honestly think that it is different enough, especially in the scale, and you know, the bracelet in the case, and some of the other specifics on there, and I think it does a good enough job to be somewhere, I'd say, like maybe even a young Christopher Ward Trident C60 back in the day, when it kind of mixed a couple elements and was considered kind of the original or more original option compared to your basic Steinhardt Ocean One, which is definitely more true to the homage route. So with all that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.